Hi, welcome back to Jake Likes Everything. I am Jake, and on this channel, I like to talk about everything that I like about a particular topic in nerd culture. And contrary to typical online discourse, I redact the negative and only focus on the positive. And today, I'm going to be talking about everything that I like about Spider Man Brand New Day. This is the ninth live action Spider Man movie, the fourth one starring Tom Holland. And I'm going to get this out of the way right off the bat. I don't think that this is the best Spider Man movie that has been made, but it is easily one of the best. It is easily one of my favorites. So I'm going to talk about this movie as much as I can without giving away any spoilers. And then at the end, I will go through some things with spoilers, and I'll make sure to give a big, heavy warning before I do that. After No Way Home, nobody remembers who Peter Parker is. Nobody knows him. Everybody loves Spider Man. And after how larger than life that last trilogy was, and how big No Way Home was in terms of scale and grandiosity, I think everybody was really hoping that we would get a street level, basic Spider Man movie where he would interact with some other heroes like Punisher or Daredevil or some other folks. And I mean, that's exactly what we got. I think we get to see a street level New York City as well that is depicted as really loving Spider Man and seeing him as their friendly neighborhood Spider Man. They truly look at him as a hero. It is wonderful to see Spider Man existing alongside other characters in the Marvel Universe, big or small. It is wonderful to see them interact with him, which is something that's been missing from these movies for years because who is Spider Man outside of the context of some of these other Marvel heroes? There are so many similarities and comparisons to draw to how New York is depicted in this movie versus how it's depicted in Daredevil Born Again, where y- you really are supposed to view these heroes and these characters in the context of how the city sees them. So much of comic book and superhero media is about that relationship that they have in tandem with the population. And I feel like that is depicted really well here. I know that the director, Destin Daniel Cretton, said that he took a lot of inspiration from the Insomniac games in an interview, and I think that's very obvious. I think that because of that inspiration, we have the best web swinging sequences and the best Spider Man fight sequences in any Spider Man movie to date. The cinematography in this movie is amazing. The camera does a phenomenal job of following Spider Man's point of view rather than watching him do all of his aerial acrobatics or watching him do what he does. We are looking at everything through his viewpoint. Some of the sequences of him jumping off of buildings, or there's even a first person viewpoint shot of him jumping from one rooftop onto like a crane, and it is like intense. Your stomach drops. The way these sequences are done are so good that you feel like you are on the ride there with him. Moving on to side characters, I think John Bernthal's Punisher is fantastic in this movie. I think Dr. Banner, in the few scenes that he has, is depicted really well. I think that the Hulk, in the scenes that he's in, are some of the best Hulk sequences we've ever seen in the MCU. MJ and Ned are great. Peter is incredibly lonely and sad and really isolating himself. And in the scenes where we start to see Ned and MJ, it really just emphasizes that. I think the suit is fantastic. I know that the suit in this movie is supposed to be Peter being inspired by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's suits from No Way Home after he met them. I think that they did a really great job of making a bright blue and red suit that really it's got the Superman feel to it, where it's almost too bright but the character clearly wants it that way. And this movie does not suffer from the MCU curse of being too gray or drab or dreary. I think it's very vibrant, very colorful. I think this is the best depiction of one of Spider Man's core personality traits, in that he is bumbling and kind of clumsy and doesn't. It's like he doesn't know his own strength. He's like the biggest dog at the dog park that is constantly like mowing down other dogs or just knocking people over because he doesn't realize how big he is, or he's just constantly tripping over himself or knocking things over. Tom Holland knows how to stand in this suit and depict that Spider-Man trait where he is just awkwardly looking around and does like a wave, like he doesn't he's just awkward sometimes, and he could be working with the Avengers and everybody knows what to say and looks all official and buttoned up, and in the back there's Spider-Man kind of going like, do we have any snacks? You know, like Tom Holland knows exactly how to depict that goofy sort of underdog guy that missed the memo, and it just blends in so well in this movie. So again, I don't think this is the best Spider-Man movie that's ever been made. I think that still has to go to No Way Home. It's kind of tough to beat, but I think that this could easily have an argument made for a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man movie. I think it's one of the best depictions of him ever. I think it's probably the best street level Spider-Man depiction ever made. And along with that, I think Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, Mark Ruffalo, John Bernthal, everybody in this movie knocked it out of the park. Sadie Sink was wonderful, and I think that is the elephant in the room that is going to segue me into the spoiler portion of this review. It is getting difficult to talk about this movie any further without talking about spoilers. So this is your warning, spoiler time. Having a movie with Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Punisher, and Jean Grey, where the main villain is a institution rather than a single individual, that being the Department of Damage Control, is a phenomenal premise, because it is a movie that is more so about the relationships between these characters and the struggles within themselves that they are all having. Peter Parker doing everything he can not to force himself back into the lives of his best friend and the love of his life is tearing him apart. His evolution and transformation, and whether or not this is trying to depict the other storyline from the comics, and if that's going to manifest in the next couple of movies, we will see. I think that could be really cool if it's done well. In terms of villains, we have, Tombstone, Boomerang, Ramrod, Tarantula, the Department of Damage Control, Scorpion, and for all intents and purposes, Jean Grey. That's, 7? Some obviously have more screen time than others, but that's awesome. Spider-Man is one of the best rogues galleries in all of comics, and just to have them represented, even if just for a second or two, is fan service. Having Punisher, the Hulk, Jean Grey, Yelena, Jean DeWolf in this movie. This is a very rich offering of the world of Spider-Man that has not been done before. This is fantastic. I couldn't believe that we saw Peter Parker without a job at the Daily Bugle, and no J. Jonah Jameson, no Robbie Robertson. There is no Aunt May. There is no Empire State University. Well, we have, Peter's not at college. And this is still one of the most accurate and rich depictions of the character we have ever seen put to the screen. I haven't even brought up Tramell Tillman's character who is a notorious X-Men antagonist. I didn't even bring up the Hand. There's so much going on in this movie that is from comic book lore. It's insane. It's great. I love the scenes with Bruce Banner where he's talking about, how do you get to decide which of these, features you keep. Why is it up to you when it's natural evolution? Why are you meddling in this, and why should you get to play God? Coming from the Hulk, I think that was awesome. I love how Bruce Banner is depicted in this movie in the one transformation scene that we got where he is really really fighting and Peter's trying to stick the inhibitor on his neck. It is a horrifying transformation, and I think Mark Ruffalo did an awesome job there when it becomes this whole fight and he's tearing down that hallway and he's got Peter's sticking him to the side of the building and he's got all of that rubble attached to him. I thought that was great. That was one of the best fights with the Hulk we have ever seen. With Frank Castle, the one moment, very brief, where MJ is, oh, is this your family? And why don't you close that up? Why don't you stop looking at that stuff? That was great. That was all we needed for this movie. Him really being at odds with Peter and the real Boy Scout Spider-Man is completely different from him struggling with Daredevil and Matt Murdock, which it's a very similar dynamic, but Frank Castle has grown a lot, and you get to see some of the more fatherly side of Frank. Immediately, he says about MJ, I like her. You can tell that he really does like Peter, even though he is constantly laughing at him or giving him shit. He he respects him, even though he disagrees with him. And I mean, spoiler for Daredevil Born Again Season 1, if you haven't seen it, but the moment when, near the end of that season, when Frank says to Matt, tell me something, Red, why would you take a bullet for that asshole? Matt seems to waffle on that himself, but it clearly got Frank thinking. And then in this movie, Peter does the same thing. It's like lightning struck twice. And with Frank being so much more of a father figure to Peter in this movie, it clearly affected him when he shot him himself on accident. I think Frank waiting at the hospital, I think it shows a huge evolution to his character, and the fact that he brought Peter to the hospital at risk to himself getting locked up, that he stayed there the whole time, was awesome. He was crying when he saw that Peter was still alive. I loved when he helped Peter get out of the hospital by putting on the mask, which, that moment at the end when Peter leaves the hospital and is standing amongst the crowd and gets to see how much he and Spider-Man mean to all of those people. Meanwhile, on the other side of it, Frank also gets to get some of his flowers. Nobody's cheering for the Punisher, but he gets to feel that as well. He gets to feel the love from the city and the people. The emotional damage from MJ looking Peter in the eye after finding that letter and telling him, I get you love me, but I don't even know you. I don't love you, was absolutely heart-wrenching. But him saving her and doing everything that he did, and her just general interest in Spider-Man, with her kind of waffling on the whole swing ride home and then saying, but I mean, do you want to come up? And the whole hangout scene between the three of them, him getting to build Legos with Ned and just be there with those two again and saying, that this is the most fun I've had in years. And just her allowing the situation to where they may be able to build all of that back. It was great. The writing in this movie is next level when it needs to build a moment and have emotional weight. It follows through and pulls it off with flying colors. Getting to one of the most important aspects of this movie, Jean Grey. Number one, it is incredibly risky to have an X-Men character as your main villain. Number two, it is incredibly risky to have said X-Men character do things that are potentially so irredeemable, like throwing a man into traffic and potentially killing him, throwing Spider-Man's love off of a building, also manipulating Peter like that and saying, "Oh yeah, go ahead, Peter, hold her." Yeah, like that is so messed up, and still managing to depict her in a way where she can still be redeemed is a feat. I think they pulled it off. I saw this movie a few times over the weekend, and after the first watch, I was like, oh my god, she's kind of evil. But after seeing it again, I thought to myself, this is a phenomenal way to introduce mutants and the people who hate them and fear them. Because you have Tremel Tillman in the Department of Damage Control doing these evil heinous things like experimenting on teenagers and till the point that they're dead, but you also have teenagers doing something so violating like entering somebody's mind and reading all of it and taking over their body. And I can't think of something more, violating or fear inducing to the average person or somebody working in the government. That is a very, very serious situation. So you have somebody like Jean Grey who just wants to get her sister back and is willing to do anything to accomplish that goal. She was snatched off of the street. Of course, who wouldn't do whatever we had to get our family member back? The big caveat is that she is a teenager. I don't know if it was stated how old she actually is in this movie, in this depiction, but if she is a teenager and like of course she's willing to do anything that she possibly can or anything she has to get her sister back, to set her free from this criminal government enterprise. Does she truly understand how violating and immoral using her powers in this way truly is? What angry, edgy teenager, especially one that is essentially like homeless and out on their own and has been burned by their family members, doesn't have these good influences? Why wouldn't they do all this stuff? Why wouldn't they think that this was okay? Which is what makes the scene at the end when Aunt May comes and talks to Peter, but is talking to her, all the more powerful. She doesn't have these good influences. She's even saying to her sister, you know, what kind of mother could love kids like, or what would you do if you had kids like us? And her sister says, I would love them. She clearly does not have any kind of positive role model or any parental figure to guide her or her moral compass. Of course, she doesn't think that the things that she has been doing are that wrong or that bad. Or maybe she does, but she just thinks whatever. All of these things combined make for a great lead in to the X-Men movie. They said at the end of this movie that Tremel Tillman's character had not been captured yet. By the time X-Men starts and we see Jean Grey having been affected by this experience, but maybe still taking over people's minds and not thinking that there's that much wrong with it, and meets Professor X, who says, what are you doing? And teaches her how to use her powers ethically, morally. And if Tremel Tillman's character comes back in the X-Men movie and holds Jean Grey up as an example, even the things that she did in this Spider-Man movie, as look at what these people can do and how we need to control them, manage them, stop them. In my opinion, that is the perfect introduction and perfect recipe to make an X-Men movie. I was glad that even though we got something similar, Peter did not say to her, with great power comes great responsibility, because I think really bringing that message home, even though he sort of helped guide her along in that a little bit in this movie, I think that's going to be the job of Professor X whenever that happens. I would love it if at some point in the X-Men movie we get a scene of Jean Grey going to a hospital and leaving flowers for some old man in a coma. And someone says, "Well, how do you know this guy?" And she goes, "Well, I threw him into traffic just to, gain some aura when I was goading Spider-Man." So, how do I rate Spider-Man Brand New Day? I really, really liked it. Is it the best Spider-Man movie of all time? No, I don't think so. But I think there are aspects of this movie where it does them better than any Spider-Man movie before it. I would love to hear what you liked about Spider-Man Brand New Day. If you're like me and you're tired of the negativity or the whining and complaining or the general focus on what's bad about a particular thing in nerd culture, consider subscribing. Again, it's not that there isn't anything wrong with or bad about the things that we like to talk about here. This is just a space where people like myself can actually enjoy things and focus on the good. So that's all for now. Be back with bells on. Love to all.